Hey everyone, I know I've been inactive these past few weeks with my upload schedule, and that's mainly due to school and life itself. For those that don't know, I'm still in college and it really keeps you busy once you start the actual workload. I just want to make it clear that regular Sunday uploads will be back soon. I'm just trying to get everything sorted out. Also, I want to thank Wiki Famous People for bringing up the idea to publish this article about me. If any of you are new to the channel and want to know more about me or how I first started YouTube, go ahead and check it out with a link in the description. It's about a 5 to 10 minute read, so it's relatively short and I'd very much appreciate if you read it. Now that that's out of the way, let's get on with the stories. This story is told in the perspective of a female. This happened to me a few days ago on my way home after a long and busy day at work. I work right smack in the middle of downtown Salt Lake City and I lived in the suburbs, so it was a long drive back home. My boss, being the asshole he was, gave me a week of closing shifts during the week I was supposed to be out of town for vacation. However, he said that the company needed extra help and told me I couldn't go. Needless to say, I was pissed, but hey, you can't always win, right? It was around 7, maybe 8 o'clock at night, and had about an hour to get home. I ended up taking a different route home, as this route would only take me about 45 minutes than the hour drive. Seeing the fact that I was dead tired and just wanting to go home, I decided to take the route. According to my GPS, I was about halfway home, listening to my music, when I hear my car start making this rattling noise. I cuss to myself as this noise continues, causing my car to come to a complete stop. Thankfully though, the road was empty, as no one ever used it at this time of night, but that obviously didn't solve the car problem. For context, I drive a 2003 Honda Civic, aka shitbox, which always had problems with it. I'm only 19 and my job doesn't pay enough for me to afford a new car. I work 20 hours a week, making $15 an hour, so it was the only thing I could afford. I pop the hood and take a look at the car to see that my car battery was full of corrosion. Out of anger, I hit my car knowing that I'd have to call a tow truck, which could be a mission seeing how far I was from the city. That being said, I called AAA, but they said it could take a while to send someone out due to the distance. Alright, whatever, I guess I didn't have a choice, right? Needless to say, I bite my lip, just waiting inside my car for the tow truck to come. After a while, I started to notice how alone I was on this road. It was dead silent, and all I could hear were the crickets from the woods. As I'm playing a game on my phone, I look in my rearview mirror and see a pair of headlights approaching me from the back. The closer it came, the more I made it out to be a truck. I thought that it could have been the tow truck, but as it pulled up behind my car, I saw that it was definitely not a tow truck. It was just a standard white pickup truck, and that's when I saw a man that appeared to be Hispanic step out and tap on my window. I'd say he was maybe in his mid-50s, asking me if I needed a lift. Trying to be safe, I lower my window just a tad and tell him that my car broke down, but that the tow truck was on its way. I thank him for the offer, but told him I had everything under control and that I didn't want to be a bother. For some reason though, this guy didn't seem to get the hint and began to ask me if I could open the door for him and that he could help me. This started to concern me now. He wasn't going away and was now trying to get in my car. Keep in mind, there's nobody else on this road, and I'm basically in the middle of nowhere with this person who seemed as if they were up to no good. He stares at me through the window for a good minute or so before walking back to his truck. I thought that was the end of it and that he would finally drive off, but boy was I wrong. After spending about 5 minutes in his truck, he comes back out and motions for me to roll down my window. I comply and roll down my window a bit and ask him what he wanted. This time in a more annoyed tone, as I didn't want anything to do with him. Somehow he notices my change of behavior and says that he's just trying to help and that there's no reason to get angry with him. I tell him that I didn't need help and that the tow truck would take care of me. He then goes on to explain that he had a pair of jumper cables in his truck and could easily get my car started. At this point, I see yet another pair of headlights coming from behind me and instantly recognized it as the tow truck. Yeah, look man, help is already here. Thank you for the offer, but I'd rather have the tow truck help me. By this point, the tow truck driver gets out and the man then looks both ways, turns to me, and walks back to his truck driving away. The tow truck driver then comes to my window and I open my door explaining the issue with my car's battery. As I'm telling him what's going on, he stops me mid-sentence and asks if I knew who that man was. I told him no and that he just pulled up behind me and tried to help. The tow truck driver just stared at me with this pale face and said that he's actually seen that man before. Turns out, he was a registered sex offender from 2 towns over and would sometimes be on this road at night looking to lure any unsuspecting women. This ranged anywhere from getting him to go with him somewhere to attempting to get in their cars, which is exactly what he tried doing. He was released from prison 3 years ago for good behavior and hasn't been seen since. The tow truck driver was almost certain it was him, as he was able to get a good look at him from the headlights of the tow truck. He tows my car away with him giving me a ride to the police station, making sure I was safe. I couldn't give an accurate description to the police other than that his truck was white. The police said they do some investigative work, but never got back to me about any leads. It's been almost a week now, and I'm still paranoid knowing that he's probably still out there. Had I been that dumb or naive to open my door or window for him, God, I don't even know what he might have done. One thing I will take from this is that I'll never drive down that road at night again, and I always carry pepper spray with me. This story is a bit short, but this is seriously one of the creepiest moments of my life. I'm a 26-year-old female and I was driving home from a friend's birthday party one night. I live in a very rural area of Tennessee, so there's a lot of hills, forests, and flatlands throughout most of the state. Anyway, on this particular night, I was driving through I-81 between Knoxville and Bristol. It was around 2 a.m. on a weeknight, so there were no other cars on this road other than mine. Now, whenever I'm out late at night, I always remember to have my nighttime coffee. This night, however, I didn't have my coffee, which caused me to become exhausted while behind the wheel. So there I am, driving for about 25 minutes when, out of nowhere, something jumps out onto the road from the trees. This scared me to the bone, causing me to let out an oh shit and brake hard. It looked like a person, to be honest, who just straight up jumped in front of my car as if they were trying to get hit. I only caught a glimpse of them and tried to see if I had ran someone over. I was ready to give this person a piece of my mind and got out of my car to see not a soul in sight. I was seemingly the only person on this road, and right then I started freaking out, wondering what the hell just happened. After taking a few minutes to compose myself, I get back in my car only for it to not start. I tried starting the engine several times, but nothing I did ever made it work. Long story short, I called a tow truck to give me a ride, and it took about a month to get my car back up and running. Till this day, I'm strongly convinced that whatever I had seen was completely paranormal and was the reason for my car dying. So, I'm a 25-year-old male, and this happened just last year in the summer. I was on a road trip from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Los Angeles, California. The reason for this trip was to visit my old friend from my childhood who I hadn't seen in years. Moving away from one of your best friends is enough to make anyone feel lonely and sad. His name was Jason, and we had been good friends ever since I could remember. I had only saw him once a year when I had time off from work, so this trip was very important to me. If I remember correctly, I was driving down a long stretch of road somewhere in Arizona when my car suddenly dies out of nowhere. Being rightfully pissed off, I hit my dashboard while trying to get the damn thing to start. Eventually, I get out of my car and open the hood. My car's battery had been covered in battery acid and had spread throughout the other components. I was stuck on an empty road in the middle of nowhere with nothing but desert and cliffs. I take out my phone to try and get a hold of Jason to see if he could come get me. When we were younger teens, we'd always have this little slogan when trying to reach each other. It went something along the lines of, "So-and-so, do you copy?" And I repeat the catchphrase, attempting to reach him. "Hey Jason, do you copy? I'm in a bit of a pickle here." However, signal around here was basically non-existent, so I had no other choice but to walk to the nearest town. All the while, I'm still trying to reach Jason, but there was no luck. About 15 minutes into my walk, I look behind me and notice two headlights in the distance getting closer and closer. It only took me a second to realize that it was a car, and I flagged them down while practically begging for help. Believe it or not, it seemed as if my prayers had come true, as the car then starts to slow down and pulls up next to me. Inside was an older-looking gentleman, and in the back were two younger men with a middle-aged woman wearing sunglasses in the middle. The two men seemed to be carrying her as she appeared to be asleep. The driver asked as to how they could be a help, and I explained my situation to them. One of the men in the back seat had said something about how that sounded like a you problem and that they'd be no help. I apologized, thanking them for their time, and told them I'd be on my way. However, that's when I noticed the woman in the car. She looked slumped over and just appeared to be out of it. I then asked in a direct tone to the driver, "Everything alright with her?" He then looks at the men, looks at me, and says, No, she's dead, but why is that your concern?" One of the men in the back take off her sunglasses, revealing her face. The second I saw her face, I can now see as to why she was deceased. Her lifeless body limped over the two men with her mouth hung open as if it had been broken. The driver then looks at me and says 6 words that have haunted me ever since. Calling the cops would be a mistake. I then back off and start running back to my car as the other car sped off until they were too far to be seen. Thankfully, my car willingly started back up again, where I was able to go to the next town and get a new battery. I obviously did inform the police about my encounter and gave them an exact description of the men. Up until now, however, There have been unfortunately no leads as to who might have been responsible. In the end, I did get to see my friend, and nothing happened again while on that trip. There are truly some sick and twisted people in this world that we just have to live with. It's unfortunately a harsh reality of life.